Today we're talking about a DualSense update, a PS5 game that actually runs better on PS5, and some exclusives that are going to Xbox. It looks like Konami is actually coming back in a big way. So we know that something's going on with Silent Hill, we know that they're releasing demos for their new soccer game that looks awesome, and now we're hearing that they're doing a Castlevania Advance Collection where they're collecting the 3 Castlevania games they released on Game Boy Advance, upgrading the graphics a little bit and putting it on the Nintendo Switch, and presumably the PS5. And the reason we know this is because this game has already been rated in Australia, and it's also been rated in Korea. So that basically tells us it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and I really hope they just put this game on whatever stores they need to, like tomorrow. Because I remember when I was a kid, I had the original Game Boy Advance, right? And I had this Castlevania game, I'm pretty sure it was Circle of the Moon, and because the Game Boy Advance did not have a backlight, I could not see the screen because Castlevania is a dark gothic game, and you just couldn't really see everything that was going on. But I knew I would really like the game, so I hung on to it, I never traded it in or anything like that, and then when I got my Game Boy Advance SP for Christmas, the first game I went and ran to play was this Castlevania game because I could use the backlight and it looked amazing. I've been dying for this to come back on some sort of modern console for like years now. I know I could have ran out and got a DS Lite or something like that, but I've wanted it to be remastered a little bit so that I can play it on my TV, and it seems like that's what we're finally getting. I'm just going to talk about it like it's not a rumor at this point because it's clearly happening. The 3 games that are going to be in this collection are Castlevania Circle of the Moon, Harmony of Dissonance, and Aria of Sorrow, and I'm pretty sure all 3 of them feature the same character whose name is Soma. He's like a white-haired dude, and it takes place in modern day, which I also thought was really cool. Like Dracula's castle just appears above Tokyo, and this guy Soma just decides one day to walk in and just start killing all the monsters inside. I always thought that was so cool when I was a kid, so I'm glad this game is coming back. One of my favorite games to talk about that I've actually had a lot of reasons to talk about lately is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, because in the most un-EA moves ever, they've been continuing to support this game and make it even better. So the last time we talked about, we heard that it was getting a native re-release on PS5 and Xbox Series X, which was a big deal because when these consoles came out, the game already had a patch to run better on the Xbox Series X and the PS5. But now we have a full-on native PS5 release that runs and looks amazing. It basically runs at the full PC spec, which is kind of unheard of with these new consoles. We all know that when this game came out, it was notoriously hard to run. Like on the Xbox One X, which is where I played it, I wasn't even able to get a locked 60 frames per second on the performance mode, and when you switch to the quality mode, it wouldn't even lock at 30 frames per second. And knowing that the Xbox One X is more powerful than the PS4 Pro, I went and looked, and it ran even worse on the PS4 Pro. So now with these native releases on the PS5 and Xbox Series X, it's nice to see that the PS5 is the one with the edge with this game, because not only does it run at a harder locked 60 frames per second on the PS5 than it does on the Xbox Series X, it also loads into the game at least 2 seconds faster than the Xbox Series X. Now I know you're probably not going to notice 2 seconds when you're loading into the game, but you're definitely going to notice it being locked at 60 versus dropping down to 50 for extended periods of time, which is what you're getting on the Xbox side. Now when this game came out and I picked it up on the Xbox, I immediately turned around and got it on PC where I could get a locked 60 frames per second, albeit at 1080p, and this game is made to play at 60. Now I know this game launched with a narrative mode that basically makes it so where you don't have to play the game, but if you're someone like me who really values gameplay in games and not necessarily story and everything else that comes along with them, you're going to want to play this at Jedi Knight difficulty, and if you're playing at that difficulty, you're just going to want 60 frames per second because the closest game that this one resembles is something like Dark Souls or Sekiro, where you can get killed by just a normal stormtrooper at any moment. Like taking on one stormtrooper is usually pretty easy, you feel like a Jedi badass, you've got all these powers, but then when you got 2 or 3 coming at you and maybe like one of those droids who suplex you and kill you instantly, it gets a lot harder from there. So you're going to want to make sure you're not dropping frames. So if you've got an Xbox Series X and you've got a PS5, this game is one you should definitely buy on the PS5. Also, speaking of EA and them doing totally un-EA things, they also brought back Mass Effect, and they've been patching the out of that Legendary Edition and making it even better than it was at launch. And now we're hearing at their EA Play event that's coming up in just a couple weeks, they're going to announce a new Dead Space game. Like, what the hell is going on over at EA where they sat down one day and said, hey, we want to stop being the worst publisher in the industry and actually make cool stuff that people want. It's actually pretty cool. And I'm just remembering now that they announced Battlefield 6 with a bunch of fan moments created in movie-like CGI. Like seeing a clip of that guy who flew the jet up into the air, jumped out of it, shot a rocket at another jet, and managed to jump back into his jet, made like a movie where someone was actually grabbing onto the side of a falling plane and getting back into it. Again, such a cool un-EA thing to do. So I just want to point this out. So if anyone at EA is watching, I like what you're doing. Please keep doing it. One of my all-time favorite studios that's been making games for PlayStation forever is Housemarque. You might not know who they are just off the top of your head, but they've made some awesome PS Plus games like Super Stardust HD, Dead Nation, Resogun. I think they did Alienation, they did Matterfall, they did Nex Machina. They have had a ton of super cool arcade style games that are games where you get better at playing them just by playing them. There's no way to cheat, there's no real easy modes in any of these games. It's just raw gameplay that you can get better at by playing, and it always avoids a deep story to tell. That's why I've always liked Housemarque. But the problem is, I'm more of a niche gamer in that sense because people don't really seem to want to play games like the ones Housemarque's been making for a long time now. Housemarque came out and said, yeah, people just don't want to play our arcade style of games anymore, so we're going to switch over to making something like a battle royale, which I think they were calling like Storm Divers or something like that. And thankfully, that battle royale never came out, and they repurposed a lot of the assets they made for that battle royale game to make Returnal as a PlayStation exclusive. Now, leading up to Returnal, I was super excited for it, obviously because I really like Housemarque, but this was their first full-on AAA game on top of that. But unfortunately, it really felt like their last chance to have a game catch on and really light the sales charts on fire to save their studio. And it sucks to say that a few months out from Returnal, it doesn't seem like it actually lived up to its expectations. I'm sure it made money, but like, man, for a first-party $70 Sony exclusive game, I don't think it hit as hard as everyone was expecting it to, especially Housemarque. And that was worrying because usually when a game doesn't hit like this, I feel like the studio tends to close down. So that's why I was super excited this morning when I woke up to see that Sony has officially acquired Housemarque. Now, I'm always a little bummed when a studio gets bought by Sony or Microsoft because that means every game they make going forward is guaranteed going to be an exclusive to that console. Like with Insomniac, we had Sunset Overdrive on Xbox, they had a lot of their games coming out on PC, but after Spider-Man and after Sony picked them up recently, we can just assume that every game they make going forward will be on PS5 at the very least, and then maybe down the line, like 2 years after their game comes out on PC. But when you look at a studio like Housemarque that's built up their legacy in the PlayStation ecosystem for pretty much the entire time they've been around, going back all the way to the PS3, I feel like this is just a no-brainer pickup for Sony. I feel like their next game is going to be even bigger and better than Returnal because they're going to have a first-party budget, which means Sony is going to give them exactly how much they need to not compromise on any of their ideas and do exactly what they want to do. And when you look at Game Pass and all these studios that Microsoft has been picking up, they're definitely going for a quantity standpoint, whereas Sony, they can't match them on that quantity standpoint, right? They don't have the money to do it. So what they're doing is they're being careful and picking up studios that make really good quality games. You're getting Insomniac, who made Ratchet & Clank and Spider-Man PS4 and Spider-Man Miles Morales, and now you're getting Housemarque, who's made some of the best arcade games Sony has ever seen on their consoles. I think this is just a win-win overall. One of the more surprising things that Sony's had to grapple with so far this generation is losing some of their biggest games to Xbox. We saw MLB The Show not only release on Xbox Series X day one, it also was on Game Pass. So you have a Sony developed game, right? Where if you go to the store and say, I want to play this on Xbox or I want to play this on PS5. On the PS5 side, you got to pay $70 for the game. On the Xbox side, you got to go pay $1 to get 3 months of Game Pass. You can download it and play it right there day one. That was crazy. And now we're seeing another game, Oddworld Soulstorm, which was big enough where Sony decided to put it on PS Plus day one, also looking like it's going to shift over to Xbox. Just like with Castlevania, the ESRB leaked the details on this one, and it looks like Oddworld Soulstorm's coming to the Xbox Series X and the Xbox One, so if you've been waiting to play this game, you don't have to wait that much longer. And it's kind of interesting that this launched on PS5 first, because I remember when I was a kid, I got the original Xbox, and I had this awesome game called Oddworld Munch's Odyssey, which I distinctly remember having a big yellow badge that said only on Xbox. So seeing Lorne Lanning take his studio and switch sides like that was always just kind of weird to me. But if you're a diehard Oddworld fan out there, you're going to be excited to know that you can play this game on Xbox very soon. And also, for you Sony fans who are mad at me right now, before you comment, this is also happening on the Xbox side too. One of their biggest releases on Game Pass this year was a game called The Medium, which they said could only utilize the power of the Xbox Series X to switch worlds at the same time. That's also coming to PS5 very soon, so if you wanted to play The Medium, which has music from the Silent Hill composer in it, you can play that on PS5 very soon. There you go. Don't get mad at me in the comments. One of the more interesting things about this console generation so far is how many updates the DualSense controller has had versus the DualShock 4. I feel like every time I turn on my PS5, there's that huge screen that's like, hey, you have to update your controller. Plug it in with the USB cord now and update it so you can start using your game. The problem with that update is because you have to go and physically plug your DualSense into your PS5, most people are going to want to skip that update the first time they see it, and then they're going to want to just play their PS5. But then if they decide later to go back and update their DualSense, it's a lot harder than it really should be. Because if you see that message when you take your PS5 out of rest mode and you hit circle to skip it, there's actually no way to pull it back up just by going into the settings menu or turning your PS5 off and on. And these aren't tiny updates that just improve latency by 2 seconds or give you like 3 more minutes of battery life or anything dumb like that. This update that a lot of people have missed actually made the DualSense a lot better with PS4 games. I remember specifically with The Last of Us Part 2 that the vibration felt really weird in that game before they updated the DualSense to have good vibration and rumble with the PS4 games, especially with Ghost of Tsushima as well. Like pulling back the bow always felt a little weird on the DualSense controller, and then this update came out. Thankfully I didn't skip it, and it improved every PS4 game I'm playing across the board. So if you do turn on your PS5 or you turned it on and skipped the update like 5 minutes before you watch this video, there is a weird way that you can actually get the update screen to show again, and it's kind of like playing Animal Crossing. So if you skip the update screen and you want it to show up again, all you have to do is go into your settings and disconnect from the internet, and then go to date and time settings and set your clock forward by 24 hours. Then you put your PS5 into rest mode and then take it out of rest mode, and that menu should pop up because the update is programmed to only show up every 24 hours. And then once you plug your controller in and wait for the update, then you can turn your PS5 off and on again, and then go back into settings, reconnect it to the internet, and then go back to date and time settings and make sure that's set to the current date and time, because that'll screw with the way your PS5 works if the clock is out of sync. The most annoying thing about the DualSense controller right now though is that they still haven't fixed one of the most annoying issues that the controller has, which is that it'll tell you to plug the controller in when it's only at halfway battery. So what they need to do is push out another one of these controller updates that makes it so when it tells you that the battery is dying, the battery is actually dying. Because if you're plugging the controller in every time it tells you it's about to die at 50% battery and then charging it all the way up to 100%, you're going to diminish the life of the battery overall. So Sony needs to get on this and make sure they update the DualSense and the console or whatever they have to do so that it tells you to plug the controller in when it's actually at like 10 or 15% battery. Anyway, that's all the PS5 news I have for you guys today. Make sure you let me know what you think of all of it except for Soulstorm coming over to Xbox down in the comments below. And remember, if you want to stay PS ready, subscribe and set your notifications to all. As always guys, my name is Jimmy Champagne and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.